So thank you guys very much, and thank you for inviting me on behalf of Tom's to talk to you a little bit about some of the insights we've gained and lessons we've learned over the past few years of our journey. So I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about my journey in becoming a small part of a change maker, and then talk to you about Tom's journey in becoming the one-for-one in shoes, taking that to a broader model in developing our new one-for-ones, and then give you a little bit of my own advice in how to become a change maker yourself. So in Dr. Beckman's lovely introduction, she mentioned that I didn't start out at Tom's. Nobody did. The organization began in 2006, so nobody began their career at Tom's with the exception of Blake, who himself also didn't begin at Tom's. He had a couple other business ventures before that. And I never thought I was going to become a social entrepreneur. I graduated from college and went directly to a Master's of Public Health program, and I thought my destiny was to be a professor. And for those of you who are undergrads or who are thinking of academic careers, don't let your professors tell you differently. It's actually a pretty great life. You work 9 months out of the year, you choose whether or not you'd like to work in the summer. Hopefully you have your own office. If you're really, really lucky, you get a window. It's pretty great. I thought that was what I was going to do. I loved working in public health. I thought infectious diseases were the coolest thing. I still think that on a lot of levels. And that's what my career was going to be. Everything I did, everything I studied led me to that. And I had a student who graduated with her master's in public health and got a job at Tom's and used me as a reference, so that felt pretty good. And she started calling me, and she said, you know, Dr. Shafir, we have some questions, and we need help figuring out what Tom's impact might be through our giving program. Can we use you? Can you answer some of these questions for us? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to help. So it started out that we were having conversations once a month. And then all of a sudden, those conversations were happening once a week. And then all of a sudden, it became, you know, is there any chance, as we are really trying to invest in understanding the impact that Tom's programs might have, you'd consider, rather than having sort of this informal relationship, being a Tom's employee? And I said, you know, still pretty great being a professor, so why don't you see if there's anybody else who might want to do this job? And then they started giving me the hard sell, and they said, you know, we have a barista at Tom's. And I said, oh no, there's no free coffee at UCLA. I said, you can bring your dog to work at Tom's. And then they met my dog and they retracted that offer. And they said, we have slides at Tom's. I said, oh, there's no slides at UCLA. And then I really thought about the broader scope. And I thought, you know, here at UCLA, I do work that I love, and I'm really in it because I believe in the impact that I can have. And I believe what I'm doing has the ability to change the world. And I thought about what Tom's was trying to do. And what they were, and what we are still trying to do, is use business to improve lives. And so I thought, well, this might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And if I don't take this job, somebody else will. And the university, California budget notwithstanding, is always going to be there. So I'm going to do it. I am going to dive in head first, and I'm going to become the director of social innovation and impact at Tom's. And so I've done that now for about 1.5 years, and it's a decision I have not regretted for a moment, with the exception of the day that they told me I couldn't bring my dog to work. So that's been my personal journey in becoming a very small part of a very big change-making organization that is Tom's, formerly Shoes, now Tom's one-for-one. So let me tell you a little bit about the evolution of Tom's as an organization. So it started in 2006 when our founder, Blake Mykoski, was in Argentina, and he saw children who had no shoes, looked down on his own feet, saw that he had shoes, and recognized that they were a good thing. So look down on your own feet, realize, yeah, that's probably a very reasonable statement. And that's when he had what we believe was a really brilliant idea and said, well, you could go about getting donations. That's probably not a totally sustainable approach. And instead, he decided he would implement this one-for-one model. And with every pair of shoes that would be sold, he would then give a pair of shoes to a child around the world that was in need. At the time, he did this through shoe drops. So gathered up the shoes that he was giving. He, a handful of friends and family, would take the shoes on their own and deliver them in 2 countries. That would Argentina and South Africa at the beginning of Tom's. Now, that is not a sustainable model. As Dr. Beckman just said, we recently announced that we've been able to give over 35 million pairs of shoes. We ourselves cannot do that. So we work with what we talk about as global giving partners. These are organizations that are able to give the shoes as an integrated part of the work that they do. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how that works. That happens in over 70 countries around the world. So there are over 100 different organizations that we work with integrating the shoes into their programming. And they do that in a way that they believe provides synergy and additional value to the work that they are doing. An additional innovation, an additional step forward that I'll talk about that I think is something that not every consumer cares about and not every consumer understands. When we first started, the only shoe that we gave was the Argentine Alpargata. Well, that's not appropriate in every country, right? So we're giving in over 70 countries around the world. Not every country needs a canvas shoe. So we've worked really hard with our shoe product team to develop a number of different shoes that we talk about as our global shoe menu. When I was getting a PhD in epidemiology, that's not a phrase I thought was going to be one that I talked about on a regular basis. So we now have a canvas shoe, a winter boot, a sports shoe, a school shoe, and the newest shoe, a wet weather slip-on, that we've worked really hard to make sure is appropriate for the climate and the culture in which they're going to be given. In 2011, we launched a site giving program. We now work in 13 different countries with partners that work in sustainable site giving. And recently we've announced that over 300,000 people have had their site restored as a result of our customers' purchases of optical frames and sunwear. And then last year, we launched a program known as Tom's Roasting Company. So as a result of our customers' purchases of what we think is outstanding coffee, we now are able to give water through sustainable water programming in 7 countries around the world. So obviously our original programming is shoe giving. Let's talk for a little bit about how it works. We don't just show up and dump shoes in those countries. It begins with a customer's purchase. That's the way the one-for-one works. We don't give anything until a customer buys a pair of shoes. We then make a match. We customize the order. So the giving partner, one of those 100+ organizations in over 70 countries, tells us what it is they need. So from that global shoe menu, they say, this is the style we need. A partner could say, we need 50,000 pairs of tiny size 2. The member of the shoe accounts team might look at them a little askance, but they'd say, that's what you need? Great. That's what we're going to work to deliver. They then place the order from the manufacturing facility. They're going to work to deliver and distribute. And really, really importantly, Tom's picks up 100% of the cost of manufacturing the shoe and getting the shoe to the final destination. Beyond that, we also cover something that's known as the last mile contribution. So we don't want there to be any hidden costs for the partner to deliver the shoes to the end recipient. So sometimes it's things like meals for volunteers or warehousing facilities for the shoes or rental of trucks in order to get the shoes to their end destination. When we first started as an organization, we actually required the partners to deliver us invoices of what those costs were. Turns out that was a horribly inefficient system because it took them time to create those invoices and it required a huge amount of time for our finance team to go through them, and it was like 50 bottles of water. So our finance team and our giving team worked really hard to come up with a reasonable amount of money per pair of shoes that they really felt covered what those costs were. So we refer to that as the last mile contribution, and it's calculated per pair of shoes delivered. And then we go through a constant feedback process so we can review and improve, asking them what worked, what didn't work. Was the quality of the shoes appropriate? Were they delivered in a timely manner? Did the children like the shoes? Do they wear the shoes? Did they fit well? We go through constant iterations, and all of this happens, and it's a result of really strong relationships between the partners and the giving team. And then we work very, very hard to repeat the process. We do not make a commitment, and we cannot make a commitment that when a child receives a pair of shoes, they're going to continue to receive shoes until they turn 18. That's not reasonable because of the one-for-one model, but as much as possible, we know, just like when you were growing up, your parents had to keep taking you to buy new shoes because you grow and you wear through your shoes, we know that giving a child one pair of shoes throughout their lifetime, that's not the best approach. So we do try and make a commitment through partners as much as possible to be able to give in a sustainable manner. We also work really, really hard to build credibility with our partners. As I mentioned, when we began in 2006, it was Blake, his family, and a handful of friends that packed up the shoes, went down to Argentina, went over to South Africa, and gave the shoes on their own. That's not sustainable, and that's really not the best approach. And so as we have grown and developed as an organization, we have worked to build credibility with some of the top organizations in the world who are doing really incredible work in development and in public health. And we really had to prove to them our value in the space and our value for them as an organization. So this is just a handful of some of our partners. And we had to show that we were serious about the work and that we were serious about the way that we were going to interact with them. So one of the things you'll hear us talking about all the time, and if you were to ask anybody on the giving team, Tom's doesn't give, our partners are the ones that do the giving. So it all starts with the purchase, and then it goes through the Tom's giving team, working with the giving partners, vetting these organizations, asking them how they intend to use the shoes, making that match, customizing the order with that partner, and then integrating the order into the partners' programs. And we know that shoes can be used in three fairly powerful ways. The first is shoes can be used through health. Children who wear shoes are less likely to get infected with hookworm, and hookworm has a very, very powerful effect on children's health. Children who get infected with hookworm end up with developmental delays and are less likely to grow up healthy. That contributes to educational outcomes. Also in certain areas around the world, and I saw Wendy Santis. Where are you, Wendy? Raise your hand. There's Wendy. So Wendy lives here in the DC area. She's the executive director of Footwork, the International Podoconiosis Initiative. Tom's is really, really happy to be able to partner with Footwork. Shoes are an incredibly powerful way to prevent individuals from getting infected with podoconiosis, which is a form of elephantiasis, so swelling of the limbs, which results when people walk barefoot on a very specific type of soil found throughout the world of volcanic origin. So we partner with organizations that provide shoes for children, along with education about why wearing of shoes is important, so they don't get exposed to this specific type of soil, and that's what's needed to prevent this really painful and devastating disease. We also know that shoes are really important for educational outcomes. A number of places around the world, shoes are necessary in order to complete a uniform in order for a child to attend school. So just by giving a child a pair of shoes, it enables them to go to school. There are also a lot of places that children have to walk a very far distance in order to be able to attend school, and having that pair of shoes makes it much more comfortable for them to do so. And then finally, a lot of our partners tell us that it can contribute to child empowerment, that when you give a child a pair of shoes, Sometimes it's the first brand new thing that that child has received that is theirs and theirs alone. So by giving it to them, it can contribute to their sense of self-esteem. Some of our partners use the shoes for programmatic incentives. So how many people here really, really like getting vaccines? It feels good. No one? I mean, I like getting vaccines because I'm a public health person, and I don't like getting things like measles or meningitis. But the physical act of vaccination is not something I particularly enjoy. And we know from our partners that kids don't like it either. They don't like getting deworming medication because it doesn't taste good and it doesn't feel good. They don't like getting vaccination. And one of the things our partners tell us is that when they offer children shoes as an incentive, they are more likely to come because they like getting the shoes, and it offsets the not liking getting the shot. So giving well requires investment. Anyone can give anything, right? We know people will line up to get free stuff all day long. But we don't want to just give things away. We want to give really, really well. So Tom's has made a very significant investment, not just in giving, but in giving well. So that group of very serious-looking people, that is the Tom's Giving team. And in that group, you have 3 PhDs. You have a number of individuals who have Masters of Public Health and Masters of International Development and Public Policy, Masters of Communication and MBAs. We have a giving supply chain team, so a group of people who are singularly devoted to ensuring that shoes get where they need to be, when they need to be there, because they're timed very specifically. Partners say, I need shoes to be there at the beginning of the school year because this is when they will be most useful. Or I need shoes to be here at this specific time because that's when my warehouse space is available. You have a giving communications team who figures out how to help people understand this complex job that we're doing. And then I mentioned our last mile contribution. It's hard to get shoes where they need to be, and so we have partners who are taking shoes on donkeys, they're taking shoes on tuk-tuks, they're taking shoes on small boats, and so we are making an investment in ensuring that happens. So I mentioned we have this global shoe menu. Here's just a picture of what some of those shoes look like. We have the classic canvas slip-on. That looks very much like the classic Tom shoe that you might purchase, but we've made a number of adjustments. One of the things we learned in that feedback process was that when children don't wear shoes all the time, the bones of their feet tend to spread out, so that in order to make the shoes more comfortable so that children will want to wear them, we widened the foot, like I was involved in that process. I'm sitting there on the shoe design team and spreading out the footbed. The product team widened the footbed so that the shoes would be more comfortable for the children to wear so that they would want to wear them all the time. And when we've done feedback, turns out children actually do wear them all the time. They're wearing them 5 or more days a week. We have the winter boot. We give that in very specific situations. Tends to be given in Eastern Europe. We give it in Syrian refugee camps. And in some place in the United States, particularly where it gets very, very cold, not unlike here, although I don't think we give it in Maryland. Our newest shoe is that wet weather slip-on. It's an EVA material. We got a lot of feedback from partners that say, listen, we love this model, we love working with you, but this canvas shoe, when it rains, it takes a long time to dry out. So we'd really love a shoe material that kids can wear all the time and we don't have to wait for it to dry. So our giving team worked very hard to develop a material that kids could wear all the time, and hence we have the wet weather slip-on. One of the most exciting things about that, this is a shoe that was developed with giving in mind that's actually going to be now on the retail side. So the first time we've seen that work in the inverse direction. We have this sports shoe, primarily given here in the United States and then also in programs that use sports for peace. A lot of use in obesity prevention. So our partner Save the Children uses this here in the United States for programming where we talk to kids about the need for additional exercise. And then I'll talk to you in a little bit about our innovation in local production and local sourcing of shoes. So part of the brilliance of the one-for-one model is also a place where we expect a lot of healthy tension, and that's this tension that exists between sales and giving. We can't do any giving until sales happen, right? Otherwise, we're abrogating that one-for-one promise. So in saying to the customer, with every item you buy, we will give, we're making a promise that we won't give until you buy, right? That's the whole thing. What you do prompts us to do what we do. And so that means we rely on what the customer is doing to set off this chain of events. So we are asking our giving partners to put a tremendous amount of faith, number one, in the product line, right? And I was saying, we are really seeing a tremendous amount of diversity now in our product line. I chose these pictures in specific because I'm assuming a bunch of you didn't know we had sandals and men's shoes. That's called the brogue. So we have a men's shoe that's sort of a fancier shoe. But also that it's going to perform in the way we assume, right? And that means that we are going to be able to give in the way that we project. That's why we have to make this tremendous amount of investment in these partner relationships, because there might be times that we say, we think we are going to be able to give 40,000 pairs of shoes. If the line doesn't perform in the way that we hoped it would, then we might only be able to allocate 20,000 pairs of shoes. Well, if there were 40,000 kids in the community that really needed shoes, that leaves them very short. What if the other situation happens and everybody really, really wants those Correa sandals, and they're very cute, so you should want those Correa sandals. So, you know, we said we think we're going to have 40,000 pairs of shoes to allocate, and all of a sudden they take off and hi, partner, we have 80,000 pairs of shoes to allocate. Can you find an additional 40,000 children who need shoes? So we have to have really strong partner relationships in order to make it work. So one of the ways that I think we really are innovative is that we've had to be very open, we've had to engage, and we've had to listen. Earlier, and one of the reasons my job exists, is because Tom's got a lot of criticism about the very model and the way that it does business. There was a lot of question about the one-for-one model and giving of shoes, and is it sustainable, and was there a better way to do business? And a lot of this was happening particularly in the blogosphere and saying, well, you know, sure, that's great, but A, is it sustainable, and are there bigger needs that could be addressed? And so let me say first and foremost, we've never as a company said that the absolute best way to affect change in the world is by buying a pair of Tom's shoes. There are a lot of different ways that you can affect change, right? What we have always said, if you're going to buy a pair of shoes, why not purchase a great-looking, very comfortable pair of shoes that also enables another child who needs a pair of shoes to get them, right? That's what we've said, not the absolute best way to make a difference in the world is buying a pair of Tom's shoes. What we're saying is we are going to use business to improve lives, okay? So Kelsey Timmerman, who has been fairly vocal, has said, I mean, I wish that Tom's wouldn't just give shoes, but would give quality jobs on the back end. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that as a company, we've actually listened to that. And we've continued to innovate. And one of the ways we've innovated is through local manufacturing. And so we made a commitment that by the end of 2015, that we are going to have 1/3 of our giving shoes produced in countries where we give. And I'm happy to report that we are on target and we will meet this goal. So we produce 1/3 of our giving shoes in Argentina, Haiti, India, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Haiti. And I've been to our local manufacturing facilities in Haiti and in Ethiopia. Pretty remarkable, and it's not just that we've made a commitment to produce these, but these are high quality jobs, and in these facilities, over half of the jobs go to women. So it's a pretty remarkable thing that we have made this commitment, very high quality jobs, and we're now also looking at what ancillary services we can provide in these facilities. So for example, in both India and Haiti, we've done site screenings in these facilities. So if you have the chance to look at our spring campaign, you'll see some of the site screening information we've done in our Haiti facility. So not just local manufacturing, but also really high quality jobs with site screening and other sort of additional services provided. In 2013, we looked at the fact that there are other people who are trying to either enter into the one-for-one arena, or they are trying to do other entrepreneurial ventures. And we kind of had two options. We could take on a lot of lawsuits and say, listen, one-for-one is us. And as it turns out, one-for-one, that's pretty much the only thing we won't allow people to say. That part is us. But people who want to use business to improve lives, we want to nurture that and support that. So in 2013, we launched Marketplace, which is a section of our website that we've devoted to support other entrepreneurs. So whether or not they want to use their business platform to give back, or whether or not they want to support local artisans, we want to support them. And so what we are trying to do is support them, devote part of our website to these other entrepreneurs. Since then, every season we have grown Marketplace. We made such an investment in them that as we vetted some of these vendors, we realized they have tremendous product, we really loved them, but they didn't have enough of an online presence. So for some of them, we actually built out their online presence such that they were able to participate in our Marketplace. And I really encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to look at the Marketplace, because they have some really beautiful stuff that supports everything from local artisans to animal rescue and health and water. So really, really proud of what we've done there. The other thing we've done in continuing to innovate is we said, well, you know, we could be a shoe company, and people love our shoes, and that's great. And not only do they love our alpargatas, but we'll continue to innovate in our shoe design, and we'll continue to innovate in looking in how we can enhance our voice and, you know, what we can do in the refugee space and what we can do in women's rights. But we don't want to be just a shoe company. We'd like to see how we can grow the one-for-one. And so in 2011, we launched Tom's Eyewear, and with every pair of glasses that we sell, and that's both sunglasses and optical frames, we help restore sight to a person in need. And we're really proud of the fact that that's not just restoring sight through prescription eyeglasses, although we do that, but we also provide for cataract surgery and medical treatment. And so we have a really, really robust model that works with ophthalmologists and optometrists. We just announced that we've helped restore sight for over 300,000 people around the world, and we're incredibly proud of the work that we've been able to do there just since 2011. And then in last year, we launched Tom's Roasting Company. And our model there is pretty fantastic because we made a commitment, because water and coffee are inherently linked, the process of creating coffee, not just brewing coffee, but also the sourcing of coffee and the development of coffee is really water intensive. We made a commitment that the countries from which we source the beans are the same countries in which we're going to create sustainable water systems. And so we now source beans from 7 different countries, and so we're able to give back coffee in those 7 countries. And we have just announced that in the very short amount of time, so with every bag of coffee that's purchased, our commitment is 1 week of water. And so in a very short amount of time, we've now been able to announce that 70,000 weeks of water. And that's a pretty tremendous thing. And again, we're not saying the single best way to provide safe water is Tom's coffee, but we're saying this is pretty freaking great coffee. It's strong, We like strong coffee. Pretty great coffee. And if you're going to make that choice, why not choose a fantastic coffee that also helps to provide safe water for communities in need around the world? So just to sort of help set the need, 285 million people around the world are visually impaired. 80% of that can be prevented or cured, and 90% of those who are blind live in developing countries. And the way the one-for-one works, one pair of Tom glasses helps restore sight for one person through prescription glasses, sight-saving surgery, or medical treatment. The way that works, the majority of sight restoration happens in hospitals and rural clinics. The majority of people who need sight restoration live very far away from where the sight restoration services happen. So what we do is we support school screenings and eye camps such that people can be identified who need that restoration, and we help to bring the ophthalmologists and the optometrists out to where the individuals who need the sight services are living. Setting the stage for the need for Tom's Roasting Company, 1.8 billion people around the world lack access to safe drinking water, and 2.5 billion don't have adequate sanitation. That creates a devastating feedback loop with lack of access to safe drinking water. And as a result, one of the things we see is 40 billion hours are spent collecting water in Africa alone. And the bulk of that time is being spent by young women and children. And so we're seeing that young women in particular are losing educational time because they're spending so much time collecting water. So what do we do? With every bag of coffee that's purchased, Tom's provides 1 week of clean water to a person in need. Because we've now started opening Tom's stores, we actually opened yesterday a Tom's flagship store in New York. We also have, for every cup of coffee that's purchased in one of our flagship stores, we provide a day of safe water. So we're very, very proud of that. We actually work with a phenomenal partner in water, and that's Water for People. Their motto is everyone forever, and the reason that's so important is because they invest in sustainable water systems. So they don't just go in every circumstance and say, okay, well, we're putting in a pump. They actually look at what is the appropriate solution for this scenario, and then make an investment in that solution. They always want to ensure that when they come in with a water solution for a community, they have all of the appropriate parts to repair the system, and they have a person who is trained to monitor the system, and they know how to repair the system. So that when the system is put in place, they know it can be repaired, and the parts that are needed to repair that system are in place, so that they feel comfortable and confident that they really can say that it's a sustainable water system in place to provide water everyone forever. So that's one of the reasons we're so excited to be able to partner with Water for People in providing safe water. So I'm actually very excited. You're the first group to officially hear about this. At midnight last night, we launched our newest one-for-one. And my team actually spent the last 15 months working on this. So the Tom's bag collection helps to provide maternal and child health. And with every bag that's purchased, Tom's will provide a safe berth for a mother and baby in need. So we always call it a one-for-one, but this is kind of secretly a two-for-one, because by providing a safe berth, we really are helping to save the life of both mother and baby. So a little bit about the need for safer birth. You know, here in the United States and in most of the developed world, women give birth in hospitals. That birth is attended by a physician or a midwife. And if they give birth at home, it's because they've made a deliberate choice to do so. But around the world, 40 million women give birth without a trained birth attendant. And when they're giving birth at home, it's in unclean birth conditions. And as a result, infection is a leading cause of death among both mothers and their newborns. By providing clean birth conditions, and by providing the resources that are needed in order to have training that's necessary, we know that over 500,000 mothers and babies can be saved every single year. So what are we going to do? With every Tom's bag that's purchased, we're going to help provide training for those birth attendants It's not just appropriate for the time of birth, but it's training that starts when a woman knows that she's pregnant, that birth attendant's going to be there to talk about prenatal vitamins, to talk about everything that's necessary to help a mother bring home a happy and healthy baby. And we're also going to provide a very simple kit. So it doesn't look like much, and in fact it isn't very much, but that is everything that's necessary in order to help prevent infection at the time of birth. The impact of this, mothers and babies are going to be saved. So what we know is that mothers are 80% less likely to develop an infection, and almost half of newborn deaths are going to be prevented. So all of this is made possible just by the purchase of a Tom's bag. So I'm incredibly, incredibly excited that all of this starts today. All right, so that's it. That's what's happening at Tom's. That's sort of our path to innovation. So a little bit of my advice to you. So always keep learning. You never know what you're going to be doing. When I was in school, I thought I was going to be a professor for all my life. Lots of things I wished I had learned in school that I'm now learning on the job. And sometimes I sit in meetings and I am convinced that my colleagues think I'm an idiot because they pull out spreadsheets. And I am looking around thinking, does everybody know I don't know what they're talking about? So always keep learning, especially concrete skills. If that means taking a continuing education class, if that means taking a MOOC, massive online, shouldn't have said MOOC because I never remember what the acronym stands for. Especially concrete skills. Never assume, particularly when you are 20, 24, 28, that you know exactly what your entire career is going to look like. Network. And don't network in that creepy way where you are like going out, and I'm saying this knowing that now all 100 and something of you are going to walk up to me and be like, you said to network. So hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'd like a job at Tom's, because you talked about a slide. Don't network in a creepy way. The people I talk to all the time now for advice are the same people that were my closest friends in undergrad and grad school. When I need advice now about how to run analyses, I talked to the guy who sat next to me in freshman English class because he's the best programmer I ever knew. And when I need advice about public health issues, I talk to my best friend from my first year of my master's program. So when I talk about networking, I'm not talking about randomly reaching out to people on LinkedIn, because that's not the good kind of networking. I'm talking about developing really good, solid relationships with the people in your classes. You came to University of Maryland, or those of you in the orange badges and lanyards, your school, because you thought it was the best place to go. So assume that everybody else is there because they thought it was the best place to go too, and because they're really smart. So make relationships with those really smart people, and keep relationships with those really smart people, and make them last as you move through your career, and rely on them. And then my last piece of advice is stay humble, but not too humble. And another part of that would sort of be assertive, but not aggressive, right? So you are not, unless you start your own company, you're not going to run the company when you're 25. So acknowledge that, ask for what you want, but don't overplay your hand. So you want to sort of acknowledge what it is and what value you are bringing, but then also acknowledge that you are bringing value, right? You don't want to think like, listen, this place couldn't run without me, because I promise you, it can. The only person that Tom's can't run without is Blake Mycoskie, because he is magnetic, and he is the heart and soul of Tom's. Everybody else in the entire building can be replaced, right? And I have to remind myself every day when I think, why don't they understand how awesome and valuable I am? Well, yeah, I am valuable. I provide tremendous value and insight. but they can replace me. There is someone else who would be happy to come in for the barista bar and the slides and to bring their dog, who I promise is better behaved than my dog, right? So recognize the value you bring, but also recognize that someone else is willing to bring just as much value. All right, that is what I know. And with that, what do you want to know? So I think there are some microphones up in the front. So if you want to come on up, line up, we will take them in order.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How do you guys go about determining what countries get what products or who you partner with?
What countries get what products and who we partner with? So great question. Shoes is actually fairly stable at this point. The biggest thing that would determine is, so if a country has shoe partners, we will probably stay with them on shoes unless there are major customs and duty issues that change. So one of our most major requirements to partner in shoes is that partners have to be able to clear shoes duty-free. We won't allow them, so we won't pay customs because we already pay so much of the cost. But we won't allow partners to pay duty because that would take away from the other work that they are doing, and we just won't allow them to do that. So the only reason we would take a country off of shoe partnering is if we're having customs and duty issues in that respect. Does that make sense? In terms of bringing on new partners for Sight, Water, and New Gives, Sight, similarly, we're fairly stable, so we're not really looking to change that. Water, we have that pairing of coffee and water, so they have to have really good coffee, and then they'll be a water partner. As we're bringing on New Gives, one of the things we're looking at, we broaden our product offerings. We want to deepen our giving potential. So we're only looking at bringing on new partners in countries where we already have existing giving programs. So when we brought on Safe Birth, we looked at countries that had very high maternal and child mortality, but also where we have existing partnerships. So with Safe Birth, we're partnering with partners in Bangladesh, Haiti, India, and Ethiopia. And in those 4 countries, we have local manufacturing, shoe giving, and site giving. So we really want to deepen the existing relationships that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to ping pong.
So my question is regarding the fact that Bain Capital now owns 50% of Tom's shoes.
They sure do.
And I'm wondering, why did the company choose to forge that relationship? Was it important to the social impact and the expansion of social impact for Tom's?
So we announced in October that we took on an investor. Bain Capital does now own 50% of the company. It was very important to be able to grow the company in general. And I think growing the company in general will have a huge opportunity for growing the social impact. Because of the way the company works, we can't have any impact at all without our ability to sell. And so being able to grow both our international presence and then also our product offering is going to have a tremendous opportunity to expand our social impact. One of the things I'm most proud of is that the first thing that was announced when they announced that we had this partnership was that it was announced that the giving department and our giving mission was protected in perpetuity. So I really do think it has a tremendous opportunity to grow our social impact.
So could Tom's have gone at it alone and expanded globally and done other one-to-one initiatives, or was it dependent on the investment from Bain?
Could it? Not really sure. But I think we really were at a place where we were seeing a tremendous amount of stabilization. And I think in order to really be able to grow, we were going to need to take on investors.
Thank you.
Good morning. I have a question about how you determine the costs of what Tom's is going to be paying. So for the shoes, you said you came up with an equation. So with the eyesight and the child birthing services, are those more complex, or some of these giving one-for-ones a bit more intensive in that?
So how we determine the cost
Yeah,
of...
the cost calculations of, determining the logistics and everything.
Yeah, so there is a pretty complex calculation of how we determine what the give is going to be. And there are all kinds of things that go into that calculation, but yes.
And there's different calculations for each one of those?
So each give has its own calculation.
Right, so you can upscale it, really. Right. All right, thank you.
All right, one more question.
My question is also somewhat related to the cost, but so how do you compete with the cost leaders in your various industries? What have been the biggest challenges, and how do you overcome?
How do we compete with the cost leaders? So first of all, we do just fine. One of the things we've been able to do is we don't do a tremendous amount of marketing. We really rely on people buying into the movement and sort of our customers and our true supporters being our biggest fans. One of the things hopefully you've noticed, or maybe you haven't noticed because you might not notice an absence, we don't really do a lot of paid marketing. So you probably don't have a favorite Tom's ad or commercial because there aren't any Tom's ads or commercials that we pay for. And so we're able to take what some of the other leaders in the industry would be spending on those and able to use that money towards a lot of giving, social impact, and that's how that has worked in our favor most of the time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys very much.